meeting. Thank you. We're going to do I'll share my screen here and share our agenda with you. We'll do a quick round of introductions. We're going to shift at this time and ask you to type your name and your organization in the chat and how you're affiliated with Broadband, and just call out a couple folks who are new to the meeting to introduce themselves. We'll run through some regional updates and then move on to updates about passive applications, the federal funding account, and some ACP enrollment information. And then we will today run, probably have a lot of extra time for roundtable discussion. If at any point along the way these topics stir your interest and you want to jump into the conversation, please do. We do not have to hold all conversation to the end. So I did want to take some time to just introduce our team, especially our new team member. If you haven't met me before, I'm Shelby Arthur, and I coordinate the Tri-County Broadband Consortium effort. I am going to pass the baton over to Bill to just remind everyone who he is.
Working primarily here down in Ventura County at this point for the consortium.
Thank you. And Michael?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Foote, project manager at REACH, working in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County.
And Tim, if you're on the call, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Tierney, doing mapping and GIS support for the Broadband Consortium.
You. And then last but not least, we have a new team member, Nadine Adam. And if you would just introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nadine, and I'm really excited to be joining the consortium to provide some communication support. I look forward to getting to know everybody and working together to enhance broadband services.
Yeah, and Nadine is a communications professional, so she is going to be helping support us in our efforts to make our communications clear and efficient and effective. You may hear from us in the next couple of months, reaching out to ask, a little bit about how you would like to receive information from us. And you may see some gradual changes in the look of our communications. And that's all okay. It's still us. So we appreciate any feedback you can give us as we do some outreach in the coming months. I did want to also ask, there's a phone caller on the line. If you could introduce yourself, because we can't see your name. The 310-990-3621, if you're there.
Can you hear me? This is Steve Sawyer.
Okay.
From Charter Communications.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Just wanted to double check because we just had a number for you. And thank you to everyone else for just dropping your name and your organization in the chat and how you're affiliated with the broadband efforts in the Tri-County, whether that's your location or your organization. All right, and then we will jump right in. So I wanted to start by thanking everyone who joined our digital equity bead working session on June 1st. I know some of you commuted from the far reaches of the Tri-County territory. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join that meeting. I hope that you were able to get something out of it, whether that was networking and meeting folks that share your interests, or walking away with some outcomes that you can implement in your own communities. I wanted to open up the space here for anyone to share their impressions of the meeting, anything that they walked away with that was particularly useful, or anything that you wish we could have done maybe more of, maybe drilled down into a little more deeply, so that we can take that into consideration when the Broadband Consortium is more in charge of the agenda and able to focus on the needs of the community that we're working with. So I want to open up the floor to anyone who attended, who wanted to share.
I'll jump in from Moore Park's perspective, and I will say I only made the trek up there rather than sending emails and letters because you pitched it so well last month's consortium call, but hugely productive for us. Our big thing was we want to make sure that our projects are eligible under the PUC funding rules and had a chance to make the pitch to them. The PUC official there, Maria, said, well, it's not very clean what you're asking, but you make a good pitch. So planting the seed was, the best possible outcome for us for that. So we got that. And then we also talked to the Golden State Net folks and CDT, and that actually leveraged that into a call last week with both Terry Theobald and myself over the County of Ventura's project and the City of Moore Parks project. So we didn't get the best possible news in those discussions, but it also wasn't the worst possible news. So those talks will continue, but things may not be going exactly according to our plan, and we're each kind of evaluating what they shared with us for next steps. But it was hugely productive to get to talk to the people in person about your projects, and thank you very much. Very well done.
I'm glad that you were able to do that. And I saw you got to sit next to Rochelle. So I thought, what a great seat you ended up getting.
Yeah, we Chongs, no relation, have to stick together. So
what an opportunity. Anyone else who was there who'd like to share? All right. Well, we'll go ahead and forge forward. There was a list of outcomes of priorities that were identified by the participants. We shared that out by email after the meeting, and we'll go ahead and attach it again after this meeting so you can review what all the different strategies and ideas that were pitched at that meeting. And then the prioritization according to the community that was in the room. What were the most important ideas that floated to the top and really resonated for the broadest group of people. That's not to say that the other ideas aren't important. And you may want to review that list to look at what would be useful for implementation in your own organization as we work towards this broadband for all goal.
Hello?
Each other.
Hello?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello? We'll move forward. A couple of follow-up items for that broadband or that BEAD digital equity, statewide digital equity planning effort that is happening across the state. They are taking all of the feedback and pushing it up into a plan that is to be submitted to the federal government in order to receive BEAD funding in the next year. There are still some opportunities for you to join in the conversation. There are outcome area working groups where you offer your expertise in the area that you're familiar with, whether that is education, economic development, workforce development, technical input, accessibility and digital literacy, tribal collaboration efforts, and health services. I think those are all of the outcome area working groups that you can join. They do still have June meetings, I believe, this week and potentially a couple more next week. So if you're interested, we will drop the link in the chat at some point in this meeting so that you can sign up to join an outcome area working group and provide information in your area from your sector. The next two opportunities to give input into this BEAD plan are to, number one, take the digital equity survey. This is an individual oriented survey. We really want to make sure that our community is represented in this survey. And so far we've got 74 submitted from San Luis Obispo, 67 in Santa Barbara County, and 32 submitted for Ventura County. If you could please forward the links to this digital equity survey throughout your networks. We are really trying to reach community members I heard from the Cuyama Valley Community Center this morning that they are actually going to set up tables at local community events and help people take the survey, because it is so important to the Cuyama Valley that their lack of internet access is registered through this survey, that they're going to go out and they're actually going to pound the pavement a little bit and get folks to submit the survey. So if there are resources you can put behind this effort to collect that information, it would be really helpful in shaping the need assessment for this digital equity action plan and the statewide digital equity plan. And then the second factor here is the DEAM tool, the Digital Equity Ecosystem Mapping Tool. This is designed for organizations to list what programs they already have going that are informing digital equity outcomes in the community, and what those programs need for resources, what they would like to see happen, where the gaps are, if there's a gap in the community that needs to be filled. So this is really for your organization to fill out. So, and it is open to any type of organization. So if you could please take a little bit of time, I believe it takes under 15 minutes to submit that survey. They're not asking for super detailed information. They're really asking more for descriptive information that you can type into a comment box. I believe, Jamie, you submitted it for the digital equity or the digital literacy initiative out of EDC. Can you share how long it took you?
Yeah, your estimate's good, Shelby. Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes, somewhere in there, and not too complicated.
Yeah, and I think that it's responsive to your answers. So if you say, yes, we already have a program, then it will give you additional questions about that program. But if you say no, it's not going to waste your time with those additional questions. So thank you, Jamie, for sharing your experience and the time that it took. We will pop the links in for both of these tools. And if you could please send them out, and then we'll also send a follow-up email after this meeting that has additional ways to frame it and forward it out to your community. Any questions or conversation points or feedback about the BEAD funding process that we're going through as a state or as the community? All right, moving right along. I will pass the mic here for some funding updates from Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Shelby. So for the CASA grants, we are approaching the end of that fiscal year. So just a quick update on what that looks like and what some of these deadlines are. We've got the tribal ladder grants that are on a rolling basis. We believe there's about $1 million left for this fiscal year funding. But as you see down below, there's 2.3 allocated for next year. Last mile funding will be covered in the next slide, so I'll punt that one. The public housing funding is closing out. July 1st is the deadline for this year's application, and then January 1st for next year's allocation. And then I believe it's the same for the adoption grants as well. So again, just looking down below there, the 72.6 million for the total budget, and that's fiscal year 23 to 24. So again, just looking at each of those buckets and where fundings come from, to just kind of keep that on your radar for what's coming in. And I think at this point, Bill's going to go into a little bit more detail on the last mile funding that opens on June 30th. So unless we have any questions, I'll just pass that to Bill.
Next slide. We'll move on to the next slide, please.
There we go.
So the last mile federal funding account is the big kahuna. I mean, this is the major event that we've been waiting for quite some time. And when you start talking about millions of dollars, it's $2 billion for the state of California spread across all the counties. And there is a model there that's a core $5 million for each of the counties, plus an allocated amount for each area that's been unserved. And so you can see in counties, and you can see the population that has been noted as being unserved. If you go to the federal funding account webpage, you'll find that there's dots everywhere across the 3 counties, and that is where the unserved population exists in the CPUC database. And so not only do they have those numbers, but then they've also got locations on a map of where these residents are. And this is really the foundation and framework for FFA. This is a product of SB 156. The purpose is broadband for all. And the definition of all is manifest in these dots. And you can see the different shades of dots. And, you know, we talk about New Cuyama. You zero in on that particular area on the map and it gets very dark and it's very red. You know, it's the burgundy color up there. And those dots are high concentrations of areas that are unserved and what the funds are for. And so it's going to be an interesting process because we're going as a consortium, we're looking at putting together a regional approach to basically connecting all the dots. We're going to be wanting to do outreach to all the providers and figuring out where they're going to be going and what gaps may or may not exist after we know what everybody's plans are. And we're going to be trying to map the response to this as it relates to the funds that are all provided here. And so this really is the culmination of a number of months worth of planning, a journey, if you will, as a consortia. The creation of the digital equity, coalitions, the work with SBCAG, the counties, DCOG, SLOCOG up in San Luis Obispo, and pulling things together and development of strategies and identifying where these neighborhoods are and getting everybody geared up for proposal writing because the funds are showing up. Now, I am going to be a skeptic, and this is my opinion. It's not CPUC or anybody other than, as I was reviewing this information today, it's been published to be the end of June, which is literally 15 days from now. I'm reading more like summer. And so I'm thinking that, yes, it's going to be in next fiscal year. It's going to probably be in the early part of next fiscal year. It's going to be occurring as we get into the fall, but I would not necessarily hold your breath to June 30th or July 1st or any specific day in which this is going to happen. I think it's going to slide. Brian referenced a dynamic that he had picked up at the event recently, and that dynamic is the shifting perspective towards the middle mile. I have some feelings about that shift that's taking place. It doesn't surprise me. The Golden State Network, if you recall, is a product of the same organization that manages Scenic. Scenic, if you're not familiar, is the organization that ties together statewide all the elementary schools. And the way they do that is with their partnerships with telecoms. And so they have a model. It's worked well for a long time. And so when the Golden State Network was stood up, we've had a number of discussions over the months about, well, Caltrans is going to build it. It's going to be a standalone network. It's going to look like this. It's going to be in partnership with, with these other organizations or with what the local folks are doing. What really seems to be evolving at this point is because of time expediency is a default perspective and approach. It's going to probably, when it's all said and done, mirror very much what Scenic already does for schools. It's just going to be at the middle mile for all public entities, municipalities, counties across the state. And I think that that's the shift that we're seeing. Why I'm sharing that is because until that is known and understood, it's going to be very hard to then go out and do the last mile. We really do need to know what the middle mile model is going to look like, what the middle mile relationships are going to look like before we can get in and do some real serious work as it relates to the last mile. It's not 100% needed that way, but it's the smart way to do it. And so I hear in terms of the chatter, a lot of urgency in that middle mile discussion, a lot of we'll know more in the next week or 2 or 3. As that conversation solidifies, I think the last mile will be right there on the footsteps. And so I'm tending to forecast more towards middle into July. As this thing continues to, I could be wrong, but that's just, we've seen these things happen over months past, and that's where I think it's going. So there is a map there is a tool that helps telecoms and anybody interested in drilling down into the map and in preparing for an application. And then we're going to be wanting to consolidate as best we can to see what responses are being done, so we have assurance that the gaps are being closed. We've put together regional organizations that are coordinating. I need to mention a white paper that we've put together. It'll be appearing on the website hopefully tomorrow. And it's a high-level discussion of all the pieces and parts we've been talking about. And what's unique about the approach that we as a consortia are wanting to move forward is the ability to deploy infrastructure as well as on its heels assure adoption. We really do have two halves of the same coin when it comes to broadband for all. It's one thing to get the connection there, it's another thing to get the people connected. And so we really are, through this last mile approach, as we push forward regionally to do this, going to encourage first the response, funds, build out, and then second, the trusted agents, the coalitions of bridge builders, if you will, to get into the communities and work on those issues. And the BEAD funding will also follow, and the wave of last mile funding to support that as well. So we've been talking about this since probably the midst of COVID, and the excitement here on my part is that the main event is it's approaching fast, and looking forward to it. Don't know if anybody has any specific questions, but that's what I'm seeing on the tea leaves. I invite you to, when you download the white paper, hopefully tomorrow, it's going to have the word draft all over it, and recognize that it is a paper that is in draft form. When the final rules come out, we're going to want to probably update it. It's throwing some things against the wall. It's throwing the outcomes we're looking for. Is talking about maybe a regional approach of different tiers of levels of service. I mean, in all of this is something that, as an advisory board, we invite your input. We ask you for your feedback. We've thought about it. At the same time, it's not in concrete yet. It's still drying, if you will. And we would be very interested in hearing what you think about it and how you feel about it. And so want to invite you to comment on that. Lastly, as I said, some of the presentation I gave you was my speculation. There's an event coming up June 28th, the webinar from CPUC. I think it's at 10 in the morning. And if you haven't heard about it, we need to get that information to you so you can attend it. I think that the language that you hear at this particular event on June 28th is going to either confirm or dispute what I've just said in terms of my own speculation about timing. So just be aware of it and invite, there's about 2 hours where the programs are going to be briefed, and all of this is going to be reaffirmed from CPUC directly. And that's going to tell us an awful lot about all the things that we've been sharing this morning. Shelby, anything that I overlooked or forgot that we were supposed to put out there?
Let's open it up to the group. Do any of you have additional thoughts to add to it? Questions? You can go back a slide even, I think, or look at the map. Do you guys want to look more closely at the map here? So we will forward the information about the CPUC meeting. It is a general funding meeting on June 28th. So they're going to talk about a few different funding sources. I think they'll probably review the allocations that Michael shared with you this morning. And we expect that there won't be a great big huge time for Q&A, but it will be interesting to hear the information that they want us to hear, so that we can then devise any questions that you come up with or any gaps in information that's being provided, and we can elevate that up to CPUC and ask for more information from them. I would just remind you that we're here as a resource for CPUC applications. If you have questions, if you're working on something, we'd love to hear about it. And we are here to support. Anyone else want to share anything else on the last mile federal funding account? We're going to move so quickly through this agenda today, you guys. I did want to.
Hi, George here. I
yeah.
have a quick question.
George, thank you. Go on in.
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. Going back to the allocations of the funds, it's listed out by county. Are the monies going to the counties? And will the money pass down to the cities, or will they be retained by the counties?
Go ahead, Bill.
Money's going to those applying for it. It's going to be a wide open horse race, and it's a telecom can apply for the funds. Anybody that is interested in the project, I think that from you basically have got to be registered, certified as a telecom through CPUC, or as a provider. But public sector is going to be doing certain proposals, because in the rural areas where it doesn't make sense and it doesn't pencil out, and then as well as, and they'll have partners involved from a public side. It could be that certain communities are going to want to stand up their own capability and create their own ISP. And I've heard rumors to that effect in certain conversations occurring to that level. But by and large, let me also mention that where I think organizations like SBCAG and BCOG are going to have an opportunity here. When you look at the evaluation criteria on this, if it is a collaborative, and if partnerships are involved, and especially public partners, it's like 20% higher evaluation criteria. There is an incentive for the public sector to do this. And so we're going to weigh it very heavily and push very hard to have very, very active public participation, not as an ISP as much as a partner, to make sure that we're building out regional capabilities. And in that areas that make business sense to telecoms, great. Telecoms got it. On the other hand, those areas that are on the hard pile that are going to be unserved, and they're unserved because of the economics of the business models or whatever, that's going to be where the public sector has an opportunity to close those gaps. And we're going to hope that we can help that occur as well. So
I'd like to ask the question too, since we have some ISPs here. Are any of the ISPs out there planning projects to go after this funding in the Tri-County region that you're allowed to say? I guess I should throw that out there too. Okay, hearing none, move on.
Bill, you mentioned telecoms.
yes.
Are these specific to licensed telecom entities, or are they available to ISPs or?
I know there is a distinction, between the telecom industry and, say, the cable industry. CPUC is going to want to make sure that it's an entity that they already have a relationship with, or a new entity that's being formed with a relationship with them. So I mean, it does come under the regulatory framework that exists to those organizations that are either in that framework currently or going to be part of that framework. So the answer to your question, I think, is yes, both. And when I say, especially if it's coming from a newly formed entity, joint powers or whatever, from the public side, I mean, that's going to be, obviously those don't exist today, but we see those kinds of relationships occur, emerging at this point.
Hey, Bill, this is Will with Magellan. So the guidelines say that the entity applying for funds needs to either have a CPCN, Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, or can be a non-telephone corp that has it's a facilities-based broadband provider.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions? I'm going to move into some affordable connectivity program updates. We received information recently. We got the updates through April on eligible household registration for ACP. If you don't know what ACP is, it's the Affordable Connectivity Program. This provides a $30 subsidy to eligible households, essentially households that are participating in public social programs such as WIC or CalFresh, SSI, the Veterans Program, and households that are eligible based on income. So the ACP program provides a $30 subsidy to cover the cost of an internet plan with a participating provider, as well as a one-time $100 subsidy to cover the cost of a device. A large screen device. So rather than a smartphone, you can use a larger screen device in your home. We've been tracking the ACP enrollments. We started really tracking them back in August when the California Emerging Technologies Fund engaged us to start helping plan ACP enrollment events across our 3 counties. And since then, there has been a significant uptick in the registration of eligible households in the ACP program, not because BCPC is doing it, but because a lot of our community-based organizations have heard this information and said this will serve the communities we work with, and we would like to do outreach and help folks enroll in this program. We've also seen an increase in several of our ISPs who have been really taking the time to go out into the community and share information about this program to their potential customers. So the information we got based on county is in the last couple of months, the countywide information is actually up to date through the end of May. So from April to May, we saw a 4% increase in enrollment of eligible households in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County, and a 5% increase in Ventura County. That puts us at about a quarter of all the eligible households in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County are registered. That's up from 19% in August when we started tracking it. And in Ventura County, up to 36% of eligible households enrolled. In April, several ACP enrollment events were held, one in each county. The San Luis Obispo Boys and Girls Club co-hosted with AGIF, and significantly improved numbers in some of the communities in San Luis Obispo. Ventura County Libraries, I believe particularly Thousand Oaks, did an enrollment event. And then up in Santa Barbara County, the American GI Forum hosted at their site in Santa Maria an enrollment event as well. So we saw some really significant increases in those communities from March to April. The average was about 5% per zip code, but that puts some of these zip codes up to, really significant enrollment percentages for eligible households. I will point out that these give the city name, not the specific zip code. The entire city of Oxnard is not at 95%. There is one zip code in Oxnard that has a certain amount of eligible households, and 95% of those eligible households are now enrolled in ACP, which is phenomenal. So I just wanted to give a shout out to anyone who is promoting the ACP enrollment, to anyone who hosted an enrollment event. We find that when those enrollment events are held, just marketing the event actually causes a ripple effect of registration and enrollment in ACP. So, it's not necessarily the number of people that show up at the event, it's the impact of the event in the community, and the encouragement of that neighbor to neighbor sharing of information, right? Like, hey, did you know I got this thing? I know that you get CalFresh too. Did you know about ACP? And so we are seeing quite a significant uptick in ACP enrollment, and I just wanted to thank everyone who is participating in that. Does anyone have any questions about ACP or about this information or about events?
Hey, Shelby, this is Steve Crosby representing Frontier.
Hi.
Hi. Quick question on these enrollment events. Are the Boys and Girls Club getting incentivized to help with this, or is it just volunteer?
It's volunteer. Yeah. So CETF, the California Emerging Technologies
Mhm.
Fund, they have over the last year been hosting statewide enrollment event campaigns. So what they do is they provide the marketing materials, they send out t-shirts. In some cases, they have provided laptops to be able to give away as incentives to the community to participate. They're not being compensated for the ACP enrollment events themselves. But they see the need in their community. They have the staff that can work it. And then we're providing support through a CETF grant to make sure that they get the materials and help with the outreach.
Great. Thank you so much.
Welcome. CETF also provided direct mailers to certain zip codes that are eligible. If there's an ACP enrollment event posted in a nearby town that is served by that organization. So they helped a lot with the general overarching marketing. They did paid social media advertisements as well, promoting those specific enrollment sites. As some of you might have heard that there's the FCC ACP outreach grant that was granted this last year. Several communities and organizations across California received or were selected and awarded an FCC ACP outreach grant. We're still waiting to hear how those contracts are coming along in terms of what the projects will require, and we'll be able to share more information with all of you once we have more information about it. Right. Wait. Well, we've run through our conversation points really quickly today. So we are opening this up to roundtable discussion. We just had 3 really quick updates. That CPUC funding webinar on June 28th, which we will send a link out for. We also received from SoCal Gas some mobile home park opportunities for co-occupying and upgrading utilities services. They'll be opening up in certain mobile home parks. We will be sharing those opportunities to lay your own infrastructure alongside during that project. We'll be sharing that opportunity directly with ISPs that we have contact information for. If you want to make sure that we have your contact information, please throw it into the chat. You can do a private message to Nadine and she'll collect that information in a list. This is essentially a dig once requirement from CPUC to their utility companies. So that is associated with mobile home parks. So if you are an ISP who's interested in hearing more about this particular opportunity, please throw your information over to Nadine. We probably have it already, but we'll just double check on that. And then we wanted to promote the tribal collaboration bead workshops. These are for tribal entities only. So if you are part of a tribal entity, or if you work with a community that is part of a tribe, that should attend a very similar bead workshop that we held in Santa Maria. It's collecting information for the same project, but they are having tribal collaboration bead workshops specifically to have conversations nation to nation with the tribes in California. So we will share information about how to sign up for those as well. And then I wanted to open it up to any partner updates. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to share? Things that you're working on? Questions? Requests for information?
Hey, Shelby, hi, it's Jamie Fall. Can I jump in?
Please do.
Hey, we had an exciting week. We wrapped up 2 of our digital upskilling courses. our computer basics course. We've wrapped up the second of our cohorts. And the reason I wanted to share that is because we're now in the process of taking the curriculum, the evaluation toolkits that we have, and lessons learned, and everything that we have developed, the instructor guides, just everything that we have. We're in the process now of packaging those so we can share those with other counties. We'll be presenting at the CalEd conference next week. And we're just at the beginning stages of getting the word out that this is available, but all of our computer basics materials have been developed. We're ready to share with others. And then we just completed our pilot of our Get Your Small Business Online course with Women's Economic Ventures. They've been delivering that course. And so we'll be, once we go through and look at that, how folks did with it, making any changes to it that we'll want to, we'll begin translating that into Spanish. And so hopefully that will soon be available as well to share with others. So anyway, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Jamie. Congratulations. It's really exciting. And I've been sharing about that computer, the digital upskilling initiatives, basic computer program with a couple of organizations, one of which is applying for an adoption grant from CASIF. So we'll see if they're successful, they might be knocking on your door to talk a little bit about that curriculum.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of work went into it by a lot of folks. We've learned a lot along the way. Would be happy to share.
Anyone else want to share anything?
Sylvia, I noticed we had a few late arrivals, and you might just reiterate, because we do like to keep track of who's here. And if you, what we did early on in terms of introductions is people posted their name at, and for those late arrivals, we ask that you do the same just to be able to keep track of you and perhaps outreach and follow up with you following this meeting today.
Thanks for reminding me, Paul. Anyone else have something to share? Any other updates coming out of Ventura County? I'm gonna call out the county.
Sorry again. Do you want me to answer, or Bill, do you want to answer?
No, go ahead. And I may piggyback on what you say, Terry, but please take the lead.
So sorry, I'm typing in who I am in this thing. So you have a record, and I probably spelled that wrong, and I apologize if I did, but you know at least part of who I am. So Terry Theobald, Ventura County Chief Information Officer, and what we've been working on, we've talked about many times in this forum, which is our regional middle mile. I'm an infrastructure tech guy, and that's really been our focus, is to middle mile, final mile, the construction deployment. So we met with the Golden State Network. We went to the Santa Paula meeting, which was great. I got to meet with the Golden State Network, and then I had a follow-on meeting with Golden State Network afterwards. And the bottom line of that meeting was the state wasn't interested in partnering with us on our project. And probably more importantly, they had already identified another mechanism by which they were going to attempt to complete that project on their own. So we followed up with them a few days later and talked to them some more in detail with smarter technical people than me on the call. And the feedback from that was, okay, this sounds a little more interesting now. We're supposed to hear back from them in a couple of weeks, and then we'll find out if we're still moving forward with our middle mile project, or if we're going to defer to the state to build out the county of Ventura. Bill?
So the only thing that I would add to the middle mile update that Terry just provided for the group is, if you weren't aware, VCOG has been notified of the funding for LATA. June 29th, I think, is when the commission votes on it. Based on how the middle mile comes to be, whether it's Terry's initiative, the Golden State Network initiative, or a hybrid of the two, that's going to drive that last mile discussion as well, and the FFA funding. And so we've used the
Patty?
phrase a number of times now, and we're
Good. How are you? How was the graduation?
we need to probably, oh, thank you. So we've used the analogy a number of times now that we're building a plane after it's already taken flight. And this really applies to that. Clearly we've got the middle mile in flux. We're talking about funding for last mile, and we really do want to make sure that these conversations do connect. And so we're watching very, very carefully.
Hey, Bill, now something you said triggered something. So I thought I should share what the state middle mile plan looks like for Ventura County, because I didn't do that. And their plan and our plan don't exactly overlap. So their plan is to come down from Santa Clarita to just west of Santa Paula, but not to Satacoy. They're going to come out the 118 and go up the 23 to connect into the 126. And the state's going to build along the 126 state highway route, not use VCTC. 118 and up the 23. The state does not support any aerial fiber. So if anybody is going to work on any fiber under the state program, it's going to be buried. They allow plowing, but didn't sound like they were very big on microtrenching. And then the 101 is part of their plan, which I told them I don't know how you can get that done in the next 3 years, which is when your money is exhausted. But they didn't seem too thwarted by that comment. And then up to 33, but not quite to Ojai, which was a little surprising. So that's what there's the plan they showed me. I don't have a copy of it, but that's the plan they showed me when I met with them. That's it.
And Terry, is that the Golden State Network map that's on that's posted online, or did they show you something that was like a PDF that's separate?
They showed me a PDF specifically over Ventura County. They were drawing on it as they were going.
Oh, okay.
But that's a great question, Shelby. Somewhere in here.
Bring up this map so that you could kind of see it, how it compares to what they said.
Yeah, that's not what they showed me.
Okay.
So that segment of the 118 ends at the 23. It does not go down to the 101, is what I recall. And 33 does not go into Ojai.
Okay.
It kind of ends where the 33 number is on the map. But again, I didn't take a screenshot. This is all from memory.
Well, I just think it's really important. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important because we have been, had some concerns in communities that this map is changing, and that there's concerns that certain communities are coming off of the map, right? I know we had a big conversation in Cuyama about the Caltrans map didn't match this anymore. And so there was a big concern that meant Cuyama was not on the map anymore. And if this is no longer accurate, according to your conversation with Golden State Net this week, then I think that is something that we need to ask for more clarity about in other parts of our coverage area.
So the one thing I will add is so part of our plan was to come from Santa Clarita down to the 101 along the 126. And they were interested in wanting to know if we would be willing to build that part as part of our plan. And I was sort of non-committal about that. I mean, we were planning a much bigger project, multiple legs, covered really most of the county. And you're telling us that you're going to come in and handle most of the county, but you want us to do this one little piece that's over here. And our plans and our partnerships that we haven't gelled yet, but we've been talking about are aimed for the larger picture, not for the few miles that we're talking about there. So that's also another thing that got put on the table. But we don't have any clear direction on what's going on at this point in time, other than the Golden State Network that's already got something in motion that doesn't include anything on the County of Ventura's project plan, meaning that we were going to do some of the work. That basically was just they're going to handle it all on their side.
Got it. And Will, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just, the discussion about the maps changing and Terry's point about seeing a different map, and that's that's matching up with what we're seeing in other areas across the state, that basically there's not enough money to build everything that they originally planned. There's not enough money to build what they're showing on this map here that I think is Bill's screen. And so everything's in flux, everything's changing. They're trying to figure out, is there existing networks that they can lease rather than build new networks. And so I think it just behooves everyone to make sure that you're engaged as much as possible, not only with the state, with the Golden State Network, to keep your community apprised of what's happening, but the value of having a partner in play who's working, an ISP who's working with the community, because the partners are often who has assets. And sometimes, yeah, it doesn't maybe make sense to overbuild. And if the right partners at the table, maybe they're the ones with the assets. I mean, I think they're kind of a, I don't want to say beg, borrow, and steal, because they're not stealing, but they are begging and borrowing, and they're piecing this together the best way that they can with the limited funding. But just the other day, they are moving forward with acquiring a middle mile network along Highway 395, for example, rather than building that out themselves. So they're being very creative about it, but it requires communities to stay involved and stay apprised and find their local partner and make sure that you're working with them, because we don't need 5 different assets. Sometimes all we need is really just one, and for everybody to be talking about that instead of, isolated silo conversations.
Right.
To piggyback on what Will has said, and Chris is on, John is on, Terry. I mean, there was a pedigree to the creation of this local network design. Originally, going back into the years, we had counties that were really interested in interconnecting police stations, fire stations, county medical facilities. Those requirements for those networks, regionally speaking, have not changed a bit. And that was where these middle mile network design came from, was on local needs and local requirements. And just what we're seeing is, as Will says, there's not the money to do that. So somewhere or another, we're going to have to not lose the requirements that have driven our local designs, but try to figure out and continue to put pressure on the state to meet us at those places and be able to close those gaps. And that conversation, this is a new conversation, but it's an important conversation to have going forward. And that is not lose what we've done locally, but certainly figure out how to get the state to meet us halfway. And so.
Carrie or Chris, do you guys have anything you wanted to share about Santa Barbara County, or Carrie about the North County project?
Sure. We're of course identifying where the fiber is now in the 5 cities and unincorporated areas. We've gone out to the cities and the county, and we're requesting any permits that have been awarded since January of 22 related to ISP broadband. So we're trying to integrate the data with the middle mile from the state, what exists now in the cities and the county, and also requesting the new data on where the permits are at and any new housing areas that might connect to the ISP in the future. So that's what we're trying to do, is collect that data right now.
Hey, Carrie, this is Tim, responding to your remark about gathering permits. Are you seeking, in regards to Caltrans, they did a project researching their own permits for broadband construction, and developed some map assets from that, which I have. Were you aware that they did that? Did you already have that data, or should I?
I don't know personally, Tim, but certainly I'd like to get in touch with you and see if we have already collected it. And if not, certainly try to get it from you, if that would be great. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I will write you after our call today, and we can correspond directly.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Shelby, I can just chime in just for a second here. I want to echo what Bill Simmons was saying earlier about how we as the County of Santa Barbara, the organization, we want to be as collaborative as possible. We want to meet with ISPs and assist however we can in accomplishing the objectives of, reaching that last mile, those unserved and underserved. And so if there are ISPs on the call and you haven't met recently with either myself or someone at the county, please reach out to me because we would love to have those conversations. I've been meeting with Cox and that's been great. But any ISPs we would love to meet with, and again, just be collaborative in how we can all achieve our goals. So just want to extend that to anyone on the call.
Shelby, I don't know. I'm sorry I got on the call late, but I just wanted to kind of give an update of what's going on in Los Alamos. The Frontier had agreed to go ahead and put fiber in town. They had actually projected it for first quarter of 2023, but ran into some issues with getting contractors for the actually laying the fiber. As far as I'm aware, they were able to go ahead and put in the equipment in the switching station in town, but they weren't able to get the fiber contractors. So now, as far as what I hear from the engineers, it's been pushed out to 2025. Ooh. So yes, so that's kind of disheartening for a lot of the residents there in Los Alamos. I also spoke with Comcast. They are actually waiting for a federal grant to get some funds on that, and if that comes through, then they will also be pushing to get fiber in Los Alamos. However, that also is projected late 2024 to 25. So we're still waiting. We got excited with hearing that the last mile fiber was going in, the first of 2023, but now it's been put on hold for another year and a half.
Thank you for that update. Thank you. All right. Any other updates that anyone wanted to share while we're here? All right. Well, I think then we will go ahead and consider this a summertime meeting and shut it down a little bit early and give everybody, the last half hour back in your day. So thank you so much for joining us, and we're happy to stay on as you exit if you have any questions you want to address with the team.